And welcome back, everyone. This is the Blue versus Green show. This is our final installment of this specific season. I am your host. I'm Gabe, joined by Walt and Jose. And everything has been said and done for the NFL. Super Bowl's gone. And we are here to give you kind of our predictions of the futures or thoughts on the futures, but our reactions on the Super Bowl and the reactions over the season overall. But before we get started, please don't forget to like, rate, share, and subscribe. Thank you guys for coming back. If you are returning, if this is your first time, welcome. Guys, let's go ahead and get started. So, what did you guys think of the Super Bowl? Let's start there at the Super Bowl. I was down in Atlanta, and I ended up, catching the Super Bowl at Jose's house. Awesome Super Bowl party, dude. Man, I feel like we might have a little bit of differing opinions on how, the Super Bowl ended up, playing out exactly. Guys, tell me what you guys thought.
Well, my first thoughts are that Travis Kelce's a dick, and I don't like him, and what he did to Andy Reid was awful. But getting to the actual content on the field, as I said very succinctly before we started, one of my simple thoughts is, at least at this point in time, Shanahan ain't it. Shanahan ain't it. The play calling was not there. The play calling was stubborn. He was trying to go to the same players that were not built to really succeed against this defense, and I can get into that a little bit later, specifically what I mean. The Chiefs defense won the Super Bowl. I mean, I know that Mahomes went out there and did what Mahomes does, but the defense was unbelievable, completely shut down in the second half. It was an unexpected game. We really thought that the 49ers were gonna come away with this, I think, after the first half, although we expected the Chiefs to not the 49ers run away with it. We expected the Chiefs to come back and make a game of it, but we did not think that they were going to win. At least I did not. And man, just a couple of costly, huge plays like that missed extra point, things like that just were all the difference makers. And then we can talk about overtime, but I'll let you guys give your thoughts before I give too many of mine at the moment. What do y'all think?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I don't necessarily see it that way on Shanahan. Not being it for getting the chip, getting the Super Bowl. But what did you think as far as Shanahan's performance, the 49ers, Mahomes, never count Mahomes out, right? Like that's the ongoing theme here. I say never count out the refs, really. That's the truth. But I digress. Thoughts?
Well, I will have to say this Super Bowl, in terms of the refs, I think the refs did a good job of not making themselves the headline in this game. Sure. You didn't get a lot of calls, any controversial calls, especially toward the end of the game. They kind of swallowed the whistle and let them play. And I think everybody has seen, the other side of that, where, they were highlighting every single hold that the Chiefs linemen were doing against, Bosa and his crew and stuff. But I was one of the ones that I thought it was going to be the Chiefs that come away with this, because you know what, we counted out the Chiefs last year, we counted out the Chiefs this year, and they keep finding a way to win, especially with Mahomes. You can never count out the Chiefs as long as Mahomes is getting the ball in the center, and he proved it once again. In terms of Shanahan is, it's funny because Shanahan has already had 4 instances where he was either involved in a Super Bowl or was a coach of a Super Bowl, and the games have not gone his way. But I'm not ready to count Shanahan out, because if that's the case, then we would have also counted out Andy Reid when he was in Philadelphia. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes
that's what I said right now. Now, I was going to bring up that Andy Reid point too, because he was in the exact same position when he was in Philadelphia. But,
right.
Go ahead.
So on that point, you can say that mistakes were made on Shanahan's part. And again, that goes back to the whole reason why I was kind of thinking the Chiefs were going to win it, because experience does count. Experience does play a big part in these games. Chiefs have plenty of it. San Francisco doesn't, and I think that was very apparent in the game in the Super Bowl. So, that's just my take on that.
Yeah, for me, the reason I don't think that Shanahan is really at fault, honestly, at all, mistakes notwithstanding, of course, it's because it was Shanahan's offense that got him the points that gave him the lead that they had, that put him in a position where we thought that they might run away from it or run away with it at halftime. You know what I mean? It was that offense that first of all got him to the Super Bowl and also gave him the lead in the Super Bowl. And the reason I don't think, that you can count him out is because on top of the fact that, yeah, this is kind of the exact same track record that Andy Reid has had, but it's also he's lost all his Super Bowls. He's lost to Tom Brady, who is the current GOAT, and then the guy that everyone's talking about is about to replace him. We've like everyone online and all the pundits, everyone is saying that Mahomes, he gets one more chip and Mahomes is suddenly the GOAT over Tom Brady, even though the fact that Tom Brady has 8 Super Bowls. So if his losses are only coming to the GOATs in the entire history of football, I think that you got to kind of put little asterisks on that before you say that he's not it or that he doesn't got it. Now, as far as the overtime, that one was a big screw up. I think that's where I think the experience factor kind of comes into play. Not being experienced enough in these big moments to have prepared for them. Obviously Andy Reid has been there, done that, and the whole nine. Kyle Shanahan, honestly, he should have known better. But we also, if that extra point was scored, if the ball didn't just randomly hit a player's foot, I forget what the player was, a player's foot, and then caused the fumble that ended up giving the Chiefs, I think their second touchdown, or was it their first touchdown?
I think it was the first.
It was first on the first touchdown. So on the punt return, if that ball didn't freakishly hit somebody's foot that then forced the fumble, then we would have been talking about a completely different game where the overtime didn't actually make any, impact. But that being said, all these things did happen, and the overtime situation, the baffling overtime decision to receive the ball first ended up happening. You guys want to talk a little bit about that, the ramifications of that. Part of me doesn't necessarily see. I mean, I understand that the benefit, obviously the intended benefit of being able to like make sure that if you have to use your fourth down and go for it, that you can, for receiving it. But is it really that big of a difference to receive it first?
Well, here's what I'm going to say to that. And, before I really speak on it, I think we got to go back to the experience factor. You know what I'm saying? Because after the game, you heard countless San Francisco players saying that they were not aware of the new overtime rules. And conversely, you go to the other locker room and each and every one of them were saying that not only were they aware, but they were being drilled on it during the regular season. So that right there is kind of a damning statement to Shanahan, that you have your players openly speaking about how unprepared they were for these new overtime rules. And I think that also kind of informs you on the reasoning by why they took the ball first, because they didn't know what the rules were. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's all that kind of rolled up into one thing. And I hate to say it, but we're kind of, both you and I, Gabe, and Jose to an extent, we're kind of saying that Shanahan is a very good coach, that he may have a chance of getting these chips in the future. But as of right now, especially with that overtime rule fiasco, you kind of got to put the blame on him for some of these things here.
Yeah, absolutely. You do got to put the blame on him. There's no question about it. He's not perfect. I don't think any player really is.
Right.
Mistakes are going to happen when you're not perfect. That's just the way it is.
Yep.
But, the question is, can you do enough to to make up for the mistakes that you might have made. And yeah, he didn't this time. And I think that if you notice every year he's getting a little bit better. As far as like the management of the game, he's got. This is why I think that the offense isn't the problem. He's got the offensive part down. I think that he's got the game time decision making not so much. That seems to have what costed him his issues in Super Bowls. But I also wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the 49ers defense, because again, we go back to Shanahan, and I know that we kind of went on a little bit of a back and forth in our messaging and stuff regarding who's to blame as far as defensive end of things go and stuff. But if I get you, a 20-point or double-digit lead, and then I got to hand the ball off to you in order for you to then do your part and your job, and then you screw it up, and then I have to then do my job again in order to win this game. It's hard for me to put the losses defensively on Shanahan, especially when in this game we have evidence of Shanahan deciding to take over the defense in a sense, calling timeout in order to, change the defensive play because he didn't like the play. He thought it was ridiculous. Even who were the announcers in this game? Was Tony Romo announcing?
Yes, Tony Romo.
I think even Tony Romo had saw the defense. I think this was in the overtime play or maybe in the fourth quarter, where he saw a defensive play call, and then even Tony Romo was like, "I don't know about this one," and then immediately you see Shanahan furiously calling timeout to change the defensive play. So, it's hard for me to put all the blame on Shanahan. Where do you guys feel the blame goes? Does it go, is it 50-50 Shanahan, offense versus defense? Is it I know that Jose, you think that it's more on the play calling, but where's the majority of the blame go if we're not talking about the overtime? Let's say why is the reason they even got to the overtime?
Well, like I said, I think it's the offensive play calling, and there's a few reasons why I think that. If you look at the game a few weeks prior that the Chiefs played against the Dolphins, I want to make this point that Deebo Samuel, although not as talented as Tyreek Hill, is sort of cut from the same cloth as a Tyreek Hill. Okay. The thing about this is the way that he's not as good at Tyreek Hill is he's actually a pretty poor route runner. Okay. If you give a good look at Deebo Samuel, his greatest asset is he just gets open with short routes, and then he's one of the best at yards after the carry. Another weakness of his that also Tyreek Hill shares that the Chiefs exploited a few weeks ago is that they are both horrible at press coverage. As soon as you start shoving them around, they're not going to get any separation. They're not going to get anywhere. They're going to fall right at the line. I understand you're offensively. A lot of times you want to try to get it to your best player. But by the second half, it was very clear that Deebo Samuel was not having a good time of it playing against this defense. The players that were having a better time of it were Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk is a much better route runner. Ayuk is much better at getting separation. He's not as good at yards after catch, which is why he didn't have as much offense as Deebo Samuel did this season. But he was the guy they should have been looking at more, as well as George Kittle. Where was he all game? They didn't try to work Kittle or Ayuk open. They were mostly trying to go to Deebo Samuel. And, I'm not going to say they didn't, right? But in terms of the amount that they should have been trying to go with a different strategy in the second half, especially when the offense got completely shut down. Yes, there were mistakes. Yes, there was that fumble on the punt. And yes, it might have been a different game with that mixed extra point. But at the same time, you have to change up the strategy a little bit if the offense completely stops moving in the second half, especially as the lead starts to dwindle. To me, that was a huge problem with Shanahan's play calling in the second half, maybe more so than the first. And that's why I think that, other than the mistake, other than like you said, the free, punt, hitting the 49ers player in the foot, maybe they might have won this game and stumbled into a win, but the offensive play calling in that second half was not doing them any favors. They were not getting the right men open.
That's really interesting you say that, because I think that it was very obvious that they did a really good job. The Chiefs defense did a really good job of shutting down Kittle. I can't say that I can recall or remember exactly what the stats are on Ayuk, but I know that they were doing a very, very good job.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Ayuk had 3 catches and Deebo Samuel had 2.
Right, I
Like,
understand.
like 11 targets.
Right,
like,
I understand.
Targets.
But I think more credit goes to the defense versus the play calling, because this Chiefs defense is what got them into the playoffs, got them to the Super Bowl, and obviously also won them the Super Bowl. I don't know that sure, I think that you could say that Shanahan didn't adjust well to the second half play of the Chiefs defense. But Kittle wasn't around, not because they didn't want to throw to him. I mean, come on, they've been, looking at him. He's been a star this entire season. But the reason that he didn't get any touches is because he just could not get open. The Chiefs prepared really, really well for Samuel and for Kittle. I can't say about Ayuk because honestly, I can't really remember. I can't recall how much they were, how I can't recall coverages on Ayuk and stuff, or how often he was getting open. But I think that for the most part, it was a combination of Kittle and Samuel specifically not being able to get open. And then the defense just crushing the 49ers offensive line, Purdy not having enough time really. Sometimes he had a lot of time. He had plenty of time. But most of the game, he had somebody in his face, within 2 seconds, less than that. So, but Walt, what about you as the defensive guru here? I would say, what are your thoughts on that? And then I on to a couple of the players, and then we can start talking about the Jets and Giants for the season.
No doubt. I thought the defense, Steve Spagnuolo's defense, all the credit goes to Steve Spagnuolo, to be quite honest, because he was spectacular in his play calling and things of that nature and stuff. But I kind of have to go back to Shanahan here, because Shanahan has been billed as this offensive guru. We've talked about this before, with Brock Purdy, game manager, not game manager, and stuff. And one of the things that always comes back to it is the fact that Shanahan has a great way of getting people open. That's how he schemes up his things, which in turn helps his young quarterback, because now instead, he doesn't have to make those pinpoint accurate throws, because these guys are just running all over the place and stuff like that. And so, if we're going to bill him on that level where he is, this great offensive mastermind, then we're going to also have to ding him on the fact that, in the second half, that offense did absolutely nothing. And again, while I'll say that Steve Spagnuolo's scheme was very, very good, conversely, if we're going to say that, Shanahan is this great offensive mind, then he should have found a way to make adjustments at halftime or adjustments within game to be able to get these guys open, whether it, start focusing on the screen pass, do some wheel routes here and there and stuff like that. And we saw none of that. We didn't see an effort, like to Jose's point, where we're talking about George Kittle as a weapon. He's one of their biggest weapons in that pass game. You know what I'm saying? We're just the same way that Kelsey is. Kelsey found a way to do it. Kittle didn't. Now, whether you blame that on the player or the coach or the scheme, but the fact of the matter is Kittle was taken out of the game effectively, completely.
Right. Yeah.
And then in the second half, they took everybody else away. A good coach, a guy that, like I said, we bill as this offensive mastermind, should have and could have found a way to get around that stuff. And quite frankly, he didn't. So for that, I got to kind of put this on Shanahan's shoulders once again. And again, the dude is learning. You know what I'm saying? He's been a head coach for what, like 3 or 4 years now? So this is still a learning curve for him. Now, the question is, and you've heard it before, Rocky, right? Everybody has a plan when they get hit. What do you do?
They get punched in the face.
Right, exactly. So now the interesting thing is we've seen Shanahan in this position before with Atlanta, with San Francisco previously, their last Super Bowl and stuff like that. Are we going to see him learn? because that's going to be telling on whether he's going to be a very, very good coach / great coach, or he's just going to be just another guy like a Norv Turner or stuff that good enough to get you there, never good enough to win it.
Yeah. I mean, just to add on the Kittle point for a second, also like in comparison to Kelsey, a lot of times when they weren't able to get Kelsey open early because he didn't have a good second half and then he went off in the second half, or a good first half, excuse me. Right. And then he went off in the second half. What they started to do was throw straight away to him in the flat to get him going. I didn't see that and attempt that with Kittle once. That is exactly not good play calling. That was a big mistake. And I just want to give a quick shout out. We can talk about this a little bit more, but like, yes, Spagnuolo's defense was also fantastic. Credit has to go to that. And watching film and things like that. And one of the things that blew me away was there was a 3rd and 14 play where the Chiefs schemed up a cover 0, which is almost completely unheard of in the NFL at that kind of distance and down. And the way that they were able to rotate their men from the short routes to just transfer them to the deep safeties or to the deep cornerbacks on that play. I mean, credit to the play callers, credit to the defense, the individuals on defense, but the way that they were able to scheme up defenses that you wouldn't normally use in certain situations and still be successful is also, to me, pretty incredible about the Chiefs defense, and all credit to them as well.
Well, I mean, so it might be my inherent bias. I, yearn for the days where we could have Spags back over here in New York, to be honest with you. I'm going to say that it was the defensive guru just outsmarting the offensive guru. When it's something like that, it's almost like a flip of a coin toss. I'm leaning a little bit towards Spags.
I'll always put it to the defense.
I mean, you're giving me examples right here, Jose, of like how like he's doing like these amazing schemes and play calling, but we'll leave it there. One thing that I do want to point to as far as what Spags says specifically about Purdy, that, that after watching the film, watching the tape, preparing for this game, he himself, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he doesn't think that that Purdy is a game manager. He himself, he knows he can hit the throws, he knows he can hit the plays, he knows when he's got everybody shut down, that Purdy's still a threat, that if he can get a little bit of space, he's going to run with it and go. So some people online are saying that Spags is just being nice, or he's being paid to say it, or whatever it is. But I don't know. I think that Spags, who would know more about the quarterback than the person that has to prepare the entire team for him? Spags would, right? So you guys, I know that Jose, you say that you said that he was the best player on the 49ers team. I think so as well. What are you guys thinking about Purdy? Walt, I know. Let's start with Walt, since we already got a little bit of Jose's opinion. I'll throw it back to you, Jose.
I kind of disagree with the fact that Purdy was the player on that team, because you know what, if they had won, clearly the MVP of that game was CMC. There is no question in my mind he was the best player on that field outside of Patrick Mahomes.
Wait. But was it by statistics or by volume? Because his running, he was averaging 3.3 yards per carry. That's not an MVP, if you ask me. That's really poor. 22 rushes for 80 yards?
3.3 per carry.
How many catches did he have?
Sure. But who was throwing them to him? Brock Purdy. I mean, when he was asked to make the play, he was the one making the plays. It was him and CMC. It wasn't anybody else. And at the end of the day, Purdy didn't have the best game, but he had a solid game. It was about as good as any other game he's had this playoffs that they won. So
this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say to that, because you know what, you want to say that was Brock Purdy and all that stuff, but those passes to CMC, they were 2 or 3 yard passes that he then created yards after catch. So let's not make it that Brock Purdy was throwing 80-yard bombs and he was just taking it the extra 5 yards into the end zone. You got to give credit where credit is due, and CMC was creating yak yards after that. So listen, I'm not saying anything bad about Purdy, and I know that me, out of all three of us here, have been the most critical on Purdy, and I admit that. And I'm starting to come around on Purdy. Okay. But again, you've got to look at the team that he has, and that has to play a part in this and stuff like that. So again, I will give credit to Purdy because the kid is cool under pressure. And that's something that you can't teach, right? That's something that's inherent in himself. He makes the right decisions, and that I think is a credit to the coaching staff, right? That has coached him up. He also is very accurate in some of his throws. Now, some of the throws that he had in the Super Bowl weren't the most accurate, and that you can kind of dial up to the fact that he was under pressure a lot and stuff. But
he did have some happy feet situations too, though, here and there. Some happy feet situations that you didn't see in earlier games.
Exactly, and again, that boils down to the fact that he was under immense pressure by that defense. You know what I'm saying? But I still have to say that, you know what, the best player on the team on the field on that side for me is always going to be Christian McCaffrey, because, you know, like I said, especially in that second half, you know, he was really, really pushing this team forward. And you want to say 3.3 yards a carry, but you know what, at the same time, he's going up against the defense that is really going to they're looking at him to shut him down. You know what I'm saying? It's not like this is a cat where, you know, he's a no-name that all of a sudden they're actively looking to stop him. So,
right. I mean, just a quick point on that too, though. That's kind of another reason why I have to take a little bit away from Shanahan, because when you're stacking a box against CMC, you're not telling me a screen pass is a good alternative to Kittle. That's like one of the best plays you could call in that situation. When you have 8 men in the box, let them rush you, throw the ball to the sideline. Guess what? You're going to get 6, 7, 8 yards, maybe a first down on that a lot of times. So that kind of takes away from Shanahan also, in my opinion. Based on that
again, this is one of those games that I kind of feel like I want to rewatch and study and stuff, because there's got to be a reason why he was not able to do that or didn't call those plays after an entire season of calling those exact kind of plays. So I feel like there's got to be a reason for it. On the whole Purdy versus CMC debate and stuff, I would say that I land a little bit kind of like in the middle, a little bit more neutral. Maybe I lean a little bit more towards Purdy. I think some of those short passes, there was a lot of passes that were short passes, but some of those short passes had to be like these, you know, these cool like little sidearms and pitches and stuff, because he didn't really have any of the options. Some threading the needle kind of passes, even if they were short, because there was nothing else. You know, the reason they're all short is because of the pressure that he was facing. So he didn't really have the chance to throw deep, and nobody's getting open. So how do you throw deep to a player that's not getting open? So it's one of those. That's
not Purdy's game anyway, though. Purdy's game is not
necessarily true, because even though they I think the Shanahan offense it clearly looks to chip away, quick open shots and stuff. A lot of involvement with Kittle. We've seen Purdy make big throws through too. Just because he doesn't throw, just because there aren't a lot of big throws, doesn't mean that he can't do them.
See, that's a myth too, because if you look at the statistics this season, the quarterback with the highest average yards in the air was Brock Purdy. It was Brock Purdy this season. He had the longest throws out of any starting quarterback.
There you go.
I mean, and
what are the yak yards for the team though?
No, this is not including yak. This is in the air. In air passes, not including yards after catch. So, and I want to give that a caveat also. He's actually not a deep ball guy. He's a medium deep ball guy. He likes to throw it in that 15 maybe yard range, 15 to 20, which is why he is one of the best in that area. But yeah, he's not necessarily as good. You saw it in this game with a couple of missed throws to Deebo Samuel deep on a touchdown at one point, where he turned Samuel around on a play where he was wide open in the end zone on a deep throw. So there's kind of a nuance there when it comes to Brock Purdy. I don't think that that he just throws these little dinks and dunks like everybody thinks he does, but he's also not a huge deep threat either if you look at it in more detail.
Either way, one thing that we can all agree upon is that the Brock Purdy debate is not over, even though I feel like it should be over. But it seems like he needs to win multiple chips just for critics. And I'm not saying us, but critics out there to finally silence the debate and stuff. I kind of want to get on one more point on Purdy, but we're running a little bit later. We got a lot more to get to, just because I do still want to kind of chirp a little bit on that Kelsey situation with Andy Reid. And we do also need to kind of talk about the Super Bowl aftermath of the parade. Just a quick note, that what happened at the celebration at the with the parade, the Super Bowl parade. It's unbelievable that that's a thing that we still have to worry about in this day and age, where it's you can't even go and celebrate without the fear of something like this happening, even if it wasn't the typical mass shooting. And this is the messed up part. The typical mass shooting that we see, right, where it's a disgruntled person or just like blindly shooting. This seems to have been allegedly an argument between a couple of people that ended up happening at the wrong time, wrong place, and a lot of people ended up getting caught in the crossfire. The fact that it even happened at all, or the fact that this is just another one of those conversations that we're having with that seems to be like on a weekly basis, is a tragedy, and it absolutely sucks. It puts a huge taint on this season. Honestly, this was one of the best seasons ever, even though like our teams had, I think, possibly some of the worst seasons that we've ever had. But overall, I think that the overall consensus is that this is one of the best seasons, because it was so unpredictable, with the exception of the Chiefs winning. I think that Vegas wrote that script a couple years ago and handed that in. So I just wanted to make that point real quick on the Super Bowl parade tragedy, the Chiefs win tragedy.
Shout out real quick to the good guys that did not have guns, who stopped the bad guy with a gun in this situation, because he was tackled by a couple of people.
As well as Andy Reid and some of the players, taking it on their own to put their lives on the line to help protect others as well. I mean, you don't know what's going on, and you don't know if there's somebody that's 500 feet away from you or 5 feet away from you, and they took it upon themselves, Andy Reid specifically, on covering up some kids or some people, and making sure that they were good, that they were safe and calm and all that. So
Andy Reid is football Santa Claus, man. That guy's a saint. Seems like it, right?
Football Santa Claus. And you know who's on the naughty list? Travis Kelce, I think, and most people.
Gosh.
So you called him a dick. Initially I was like, also like it was a dick move. It was a jerk move. I personally actually don't have that big of a problem with what happened.
Me neither.
Yeah, this is like kind of a normal thing. I've had these situations with my own like athletes that I train in martial arts and stuff like that, where we kind of get heated in public, and that's the issue. And I usually have to do what Andy Reid had to do with Travis. Actually, Andy Reid handled it with like the most polite Santa Claus kind of way. He's like, "Hey, I love your passion, brother, but I got cameras all over me and stuff, When I've had to deal with that situation, it is kind of that same thing. Like, hey, bro, that I have no problem with how you feel and all that stuff, but there's people here looking, and you can't talk to me that way. I've had those situations. I have no problem with that happening, because
I've done it to teammates. I've done it to teammates.
The thing is,
hold on.
Before I let you go real quick, the thing is, what I wanted to say is that I trust in the relationship that they have. This isn't this guy just came onto the team and he's talking to the coach like this. The context that I take away from it before anything is that these guys have been together forever. They do commercials together. I'm sure that they are more of a family than anything. So taking that into the context, I don't have that big of a problem with it. A new guy, you're getting shit.
See,
I don't know if you heard the Kelsey brothers on their podcast, and because he did mention that, and he said, "Yeah, you know what, that was kind of a dick move." He admits it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. He took ownership in the whole nine. That's the other thing too,
right? But the other thing is like he said exactly what you said. You know what? He's like Papa. You know what I'm saying? We have this type of relationship, and you know what? That's what happens in competitive sports. Like I said, Bill Parcells had it with some of his players. We've seen it with the Jets and Quinnen Williams infamously screaming at Ulbrich last year because you know what? he wanted them to put more faith on the defense and stuff like that. These are things that happen. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I've done it personally where, you know what, I grabbed a teammate on the field by his face mask and dragged him off to the sideline because I wasn't happy the way he was playing. He was my best friend at the time. But you know what? You're playing a competitive sport. You know what I'm saying? And so sometimes emotions do get the best of you, but that doesn't mean that it's disrespectful or anything like that. You just have to be present in the moment at the time and understand that afterwards you guys are a team. And I think Kelsey clearly knows that. You know what I'm saying? I don't, maybe the optics of it look bad for people who don't know. But I didn't have a problem with it when it happened first, and I don't have a problem with it right now.
Here's the issue. I don't have a problem with the passion. I don't have a problem with the shouting. I have a problem with him damn near knocking over a 65-year-old man. You can say that, Gabe, because you're a young man. If somebody tries to come at you, you're a jiu-jitsu instructor, bro. There's a big difference between that and a 65-year-old overweight man. You know what I mean? That crossed the line, man.
No, that's why I gotta push back. That's why I gotta push back, because the thing is that, like, he's not seeing a 65. He's seeing his coach. To them, everyone is like, age doesn't matter. Everyone's there on a football team. There's football players, football coaches, football personnel, football. You know, and it's all under the premise and the umbrella of, you know, kind of football culture mentality. A lot of testosterone, a lot of, you know, kind of, you know, chest bumping and thumping, the whole nine and stuff like that. And, you know, you look at your coach as one of the guys, not as a, you know, not as your grandpa. So that's,
but
you know, I think that's
do you honestly believe Kelsey went there and said, I'm going to push this old guy down to the ground? I think that was just inadvertent. I don't see that as being him purposely running down from like the 50-yard line and say, I'm going to tackle this guy so he can listen to me. I didn't
say he did that, but he certainly did a little bit more than he should have, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know.
It's an accident. I bumped into you. You know what I mean? All right. So I think that's enough on the Chiefs. We've talked about the Chiefs enough. We know that we're definitely going to probably most likely hear more than our share or our desire to hear about the Chiefs next year and throughout the season, throughout the off season, not just because of the Chiefs themselves and home, but, you know, Swift power. It is what it is. But it's time that we get a little bit of a discussion going on the Jets and Giants this season. I want to get started with the Giants as the sole Giants representative here. Just my overall thoughts on the season. As I mentioned before, I think that the season was an extremely disappointing one, probably one of the most disappointing seasons that I can recall in my short tenure as a Giants fan. You know, that short tenure being 20 years now. But I would say that, you know, despite how disappointing it ended up coming out. Again, I'm a big believer in context matters, and in the context of everything, under the situation that the Giants kind of had to deal with, things that we, you know, sure, there were mistakes that were made in all areas of the football team, on the, you know, coaching side, on player personnel side, on injury side and stuff like that. There were a lot of these issues. I mean, you know, but if we're gonna also give Shanahan the that shadow of a doubt that he's, you know, 3 years as a head coach and he's learning, then we got to give that to Dable also. It's his second year. He made some mistakes, and I can only hope that he's gonna get better. You know, if he doesn't get better and he gets worse, then, you know, that's a little bit of a different story there. We do know that there's going to be the cloud of Bill Belichick weighing over Brian Dable this season. But overall, I'm not entirely disappointed with the Giants season overall, just because of, under the context of losing Daniel Jones, losing, you know, all the players that we lost, you know, as far as the injuries and stuff, everything that we went through in the season, and then kind of coming out from that a little bit towards the end of the season, and even having a little bit of a playoff hope for 3 weeks, you know, it goes to show me that they're, even though it might be a little bit up and down, okay, it's flowing in the right direction, in my opinion, personally. I think, especially with Shane, you could say what you will about Dable, but with Shane specifically, I think that we got the right guy in Shane. I think that push comes to shove, if he has to get rid of Dable, I think that he won't have any trouble getting rid of Dable if he had to. I don't think that he has to. And, I have a lot of certainty with the future of this franchise because of Shane and because of like the little things that we've done over the last couple of years and stuff. This upcoming draft seems really promising. Rumors sound like we're gonna definitely be picking up a second quarterback, a backup quarterback. Whether that's high on the priority list or not, that remains to be seen. But I think that Daniel Jones is gonna have to have another prove it year if he makes it back, or at least prove it that he belongs somewhere. So. All of that again goes to my belief that Shane is the man and he knows what he's doing, and I put all my trust in Shane before anything else on the Giants, and I'm very comfortable with the future of the Giants. So
I truly can't wait for you to give Salah the same grace as a third-year coach that you gave to Shanahan and Daboll when we talk about the Jets later. I have a hard time.
Hold on, there's a very, very big difference there, and we know that. We know that.
What's the difference?
Please tell me what it is. That Daboll is known as being kind of a dick to his personnel. Is that the difference? Look, I don't want to get into it because I knew.
You don't want to get into it. Don't bring it up.
I know that was a comment we weren't going to agree with. It's kind of sarcastic because I knew you were going to what about it and say that it's very different. But let's get to the Giants.
I don't get to defend myself.
We're going to talk about the Jets later. You can talk about it then. We can talk about it then. Okay. So anyway, I can't wait until you give him that grace. With the Giants, this was a difficult season for me to gauge, to be honest with you. I'm actually having a tough time gauging both of these teams right now. I still don't feel far enough removed from the season for some reason. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because it was just so many weeks of pure misery having to watch these two teams with a couple of rays of light somewhere in the middle. I'm mostly being sarcastic. I do think that Daboll definitely deserves a few more chances with the team because of the fact that he has had some playoff success and he has had some success overall in making midseason adjustments and bringing a team that, for all intents and purposes, should have been at the bottom of the barrel all season into a place where the record wasn't necessarily respectable, but the result was. I'll agree with you. Shane is probably the man for this team right now. I don't blame him for the offensive line issues so much because the man has been drafting 14,000 offensive linemen over the last few seasons. There's not much you can do about it. I mean, it's just hard to draft a good offensive line. Both of our teams suffer from that. Should it be this bad? Probably not. But that's kind of an ongoing discussion, and we have to see what happens in this next season when we see what they do to bolster the offensive line. I'm sure there'll be a number of changes after the season that some of these players had on the offensive line. The issue, to me, the biggest issue that I'm having is that now you just have such an uncertain commodity in Daniel Jones, and I think that's a huge problem. And we have that same issue also. We have an old man at quarterback, but when you're paying him $40 million a year, and after his supposed prove it seasons where he got to the playoffs and earned the right to be the starting quarterback, to have a difficult season because of the offensive line, and that's a big part of it, but to have another prove me season after you already had your prove me season and signed the big contract is very concerning. I'm not saying Jones ain't it. Remember, I was one of the guys early in the season that was giving a lot of credit to Daniel Jones, although I think he started to fall apart after the pressure was just getting to him. It was just too much, and he started to make a lot more mistakes. That's why he got benched eventually, and it was the right thing to do. Injury notwithstanding. I mean, there's a lot of positive strides y'all took on defense this season. That's going to be interesting, obviously, with Wink no longer being there. Are you going to be able to build on that momentum? Is it going to be the type of situation where, like you said a couple of times this season, Gabe, maybe Wink's system was a little too complicated and this team will thrive under a different defensive coordinator? The jury is still out for me on that one, because when this team was thriving under Wink's blitz-heavy system, holy shit, were they thriving. So you want to see whoever jumps in to the role this coming season. You want to see them keep some of those blitz heavy packages, I think, and play to those strengths, especially since I feel like a lot of the defense is probably going to be similar to what it was with the Giants this year. I think the offense is obviously going to see a lot more fluctuation. We'll probably see a wide receiver, some offensive linemen. We're going to get a new quarterback, even though it might not be the starter for the Giants. But it's just like being a fan of these two teams, right? Everything about this season was fucking bittersweet. Because you had some things to really cling to. And yes, like you said, Shane is making some great moves. There are some positive things that you see. Some of the wide receivers are actually starting to show up that the Giants were expected to get some production out of. But then you also have the uncertainty of what's going to happen with Saquon. So, I mean, it's hard for me to give a rating or a positive or a negative emotion. It's just like free-form thoughts about what happened with the Giants for me this season. I think the jury is still going to be out, honestly, for me, until I see the start of some of what they're going to do this offseason, because they can certainly build something great off of this. I don't think that there's any doubt about that. But it can also go south really fast, as we saw at the beginning of the season with both of our teams. But we're talking about the Giants now, and it went south really fast. So I'm hoping that that's not what we're going to see next season with another adjustment period, the different coaches and all of that.
Well,
so for me with the Giants, I'm kind of ambivalent with them. It's one of these things where, throughout the season last year, I think during our shows here, I kept on asking the question, what are the Giants? Are the Giants the team that we saw to start 2022, or are they the team that ended up 2022 with that run where they were not as good going forward? And I think 2023 kind of answered that question a little bit for me. This is a team that's still in flux. This is a team that clearly needs an influx of talent, especially on the offensive side, especially on the wide receiver side. I think the defense for them is shaping up pretty nicely. They have some key elements in place. They have Dexter Lawrence. They have Kayvon Thibodeau. They have Deonte Banks. That's a good, solid foundation to start a defense with. And, bringing in, some of these guys like McKinney and, the Okereke was a find, a gem in the rough, for them. So the defensive side, I'm not as worried about. I do worry about that offense. And I think that's something that we had worries and concerns going into the season last year. Those were never addressed. I hate to say it, but Darren Waller was an extreme disappointment. And I'd be surprised if he's still on this team next year. But there are things that this team needs to do in order to be competitive in the NFC East. They're clearly not close to the good teams in terms of the Philadelphias and the Cowboys of the world, but they do benefit from the fact that they are in the NFC East, which is not the greatest conference right now in terms of talent, but that is slowly changing because you've got some teams that are rising. The Giants are going to have to find a way to keep up. In terms of the coaching staff, again, I'm ambivalent with them. Daboll has shown some good things. Daboll has shown some bad things. I was extremely critical of him last season based on his treatment and of his players. In terms of that, we got that report from that kind of highlighted a lot of the issues with that coaching staff. And, a lot of people can say that's rumors and things of that nature, but, Wink Martindale leaving, the difficulties that they had in terms of finding a defensive coach to replace him. I think some of that stuff is true. But the good thing about it is that these things are correctable. And you're talking about a coach that is now entering his third year in the league as a head coach. These are all teachable moments for him. And so I think there is a good platform for this team to improve going forward. The draft and free agency is going to really define what this season is going to look like for the Giants. And in terms of the draft, I really do believe that you got to start looking for an alternative to Daniel Jones. And maybe that starts with the first round pick of the Giants this year.
Well, I think that's what the rumors are. The rumors seem to be that they're going to be looking. I think JJ McCarthy, I think, is the guy that's been tied to the Giants.
That's a scary thought right there. So that's a scary thought right there.
Why you say that?
Well, there is a when I'm not a big college football fan, but I do follow players, and I do follow the big names, especially around this time. This time is around the time that I like to kind of like dig into stuff like that. And with quarterbacks, it's a tricky thing. But, you look at some of the quarterbacks, J.J. McCarthy being one of them, and you wonder, are they a product of team or are they a product of talent? And for me, and this is just me personally, I think McCarthy is a product of team because he is surrounded by playmakers on that team, on that Michigan team, Wolverines team. And you look at some of the other quarterbacks that are in this draft, and their teams are not as great, but they have found a way to overcome that and make their teams great. I don't know if JJ McCarthy is one of those guys, so that's why I say, We'll
see. I mean, I think that what's most likely going to happen is that they're going to go with an offensive lineman on the for their first pick, because I think that it's just going to cost them way too much to get to the top 3. And the quarterbacks that they want are going to be gone in the first 4. So if the quarterbacks are going to be gone, then keep the pick that you got. Get yourself an offensive tackle or lineman, generally, just because they're all going to be available at number 6. And get yourself a J.J. McCarthy in the second round.
We're going to have Tommy DeVito on the practice squad.
It makes most sense.
We're doing Tommy DeVito on the practice squad next season.
Tommy DeVito, I don't know if Tommy DeVito's good. Yeah, I mean, he's gonna be in the practice squad for sure. I think that's where, because Terrell Taylor's not getting re-signed. He's available, but I think it's already been discussed, and the way that they played him towards the end of the season was more of a like, hey, get your last games here as a Giant, because you're not coming back. Basically, that's what it felt like.
I'll take him.
But yeah, we'll see. I mean, as the Jets, I think the Jets will take anybody at this point. So
I mean, he'd be a solid backup. He'd be an actual solid backup, clearly, after
like I said, I think that we have, the right team in place to right the ship that has been wrong for quite some time. So, all right. So now the Jets. Who wants to start?
I'm not ready. Well, you go first. My brain ain't brain. My emotions are too emotional, so I'm gonna let you go first.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I'm gonna preface the fact that the Jets, their first year, I believe they won 4 games, right? Under Saleh. Their next year, they were actually at one point, they won 7, but actually at one point they were 5-2 under Saleh before kind of like the floor kind of disappeared underneath them. Mm-hmm. And you look at this team this past year, they won 7 games also. And it was a frustrating 2023 campaign. I mean, the most Jet thing to happen was to have Aaron Rodgers go out on that field on September 11th and last 4 plays, right? I mean, that is the most Jet thing that can happen, right? But that being said, during the season it was frustrating, but now that you take a step back here, I don't think it is as bad as we kind of felt it at the time. I think that team was a victim of all this hoopla and expectation because Aaron Rodgers was here. And if you look back at it, given the struggles that they had on offense, especially given the fact that their quarterback's situation was really truly a carousel in terms of who's going to play, who wasn't, how long is Zach going to be there. Then we had Trevor Siemian, then we had Tim Boyle and things like that. And for that team to go out and win 7 games, I'm almost going to say it's a minor miracle if you think about it. You know what I'm saying? Given how bad that offense was, given how many different offensive line combinations that team went through, given the fact that I believe in the Jets and Giants game, that team was down to one healthy backup on the line. You know, for that team not only to win 7 games, but even to be in the discussion of a playoff hunt in early December, you know, you look back at it now and it's like, how in the world did that even happen? You know what I'm saying?
Well,
given all the struggles, all of the things that occurred to that team, you know, Salah keeping that team together when, quite frankly, that easily he could have lost the team very, very easily, and he kept them believing all the way to the end. So, you know, that being said, I think, you know, you look at this upcoming 2024 season and you look at it with, you know, optimism, because hopefully Aaron Rodgers does come back and he stays healthy. You know, you're going to be looking at revamping an offensive line that really has some talent to begin with, because you look at Joe Tippmann, he's a solid center. If he had probably played, you know, this entire season as a center, we may be talking about him as an all rookie center. You have AVT that's coming back from some freakish injuries, and he's got plenty of talent. Lakeland Tomlinson, you know, say what you want about him, but at least he played all 17 games, which that I think is an accomplishment. You know what I'm saying? And just look at the team in general. You have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. You have Breece Hall as a running back that's coming back healthy, coming off of an incredible season. You look at Garrett Wilson. You look at Tyler Conklin, who had his best year as a tight end with those quarterbacks. You look at the defensive side, Quincy Williams, Jermaine Johnson. This is a team that is stacked with talent. And so I think we've always said, going back before, the Jets are like one quarterback away. Now, clearly 2023 kind of dispelled that myth, because we're a quarterback and a lot of offensive linemen away. But
and a couple of wide receivers.
Yeah, and we need more receivers, right? But the thing about it is, with the Jets, we've always said that even with average play, that Jet team would have been a playoff team. Last year, if we had average play on the quarterback side, that team would have been a playoff team. If Aaron Rodgers played, despite the fact that they had all these issues last year, that team would have been a playoff team. So I think the Jets are not as in dire straits as everybody wants to believe, because the foundation is rock solid for that team. And it's just a matter of making sure that we can keep Aaron Rodgers upright and we can get some wide receivers for him. But otherwise, I happen to think that the Jets' outlook going into 2024 is pretty rosy.
It's
middling, maybe.
It's interesting. I'm not sure if you were referencing me specifically on like how I feel like the Jets situation is dire. I do think that it's dire, but I don't think it's dire for 2024. I think that 2024 looks great. I think that it's dire for the future after that, and I'll get into that in a moment.
I agree with that because you know what, we don't have a quarterback of our future behind Aaron Rodgers right now.
Right. So, but as far as this season, we're talking about this past season. And again, I think when it comes to this season, it was a disappointing season, as I mentioned, for both teams. I think more so for the Jets, because the higher the expectations, the bigger the disappointment when you don't meet them. So, but as you said, just like we all just heard, the Jets do have kind of a stacked team on special teams, on defense, and even on offense, with the exception of the O-line. You do have some options there. You definitely need some wide receivers, and you got to fix that O-line and finally get yourself a quarterback. But overall, I think that the biggest detriment to this season was just lack of leadership. And this is what my gripe and the difference that I think is in Salah versus Dable. Now, before you gripe and all of that, about like my singing praises for Dable. I wasn't giving him singing praises. I was giving you confidence. And the reason for that is because whether you like or dislike, love it or hate it, how Dable coaches and how he runs his team and how he leads his team, he's gonna lead it and run it the way that he wants, and you can be sure of that. With Saleh, that's the one thing that we don't know necessarily. We haven't seen examples of like cohesive leadership from him. It's so much indecision, so much, oh, well, that wasn't my decision, it was Woody's decision, or that's not the guy that I wanted, or I didn't really want to do this, I didn't want to do that. So then why are you head coaching if there's so much of I didn't, or I couldn't, or it wasn't really my call, and I disagree that he's what kept the team together. I think that was Aaron. I think Aaron Rodgers is what kept the team together. I think that, for the most part, and I felt this the previous season, the 22 season, for the most part, the team didn't have faith in Zach Wilson. And I think that they all played for themselves and their look and their contracts and stuff. And they were doing their best to get Zach Wilson to kind of come up to their level so that they can play together. But I think that they did realize that they got to make it happen because Zach Wilson's not going to make it happen. What kept them going? I think it was Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show every single week on social media, talking to them, literally going to the games, even though he's still recovering. He was showing that leadership and keeping the team together, I think, more so than Saleh, in my opinion. Of course, we're not in the locker room. I'm not in the locker room. This is all from what I see and hear, from the games. But that's my honest opinion on what's going on with the Jets. I think that that's my biggest issue with Saleh. And the reason I say that, like the difference between Dable, Saleh, and Shanahan is because Dable's been here only a couple years, but his record's 14-18 with 1-1 in the playoffs. Saleh's 18-33, 1 year removed, one year on top of that. And Shanahan, we don't have to talk about Shanahan because he's had plenty of success, even though he hasn't gotten the chip. Someone's getting to the Super Bowl. We can gripe all about like what he's doing wrong to not win the chip, but we can't put him in this conversation if we're honest. So, but that is a difference. And again, for me, I have a lot more confidence in Dable leading the team the way that he wants to lead it, because he's showing me that he's actually taking action and leading the team, versus Saleh, where I don't know what he's doing to lead the team. And that is where my issues with him is.
I think this is a question of extremes, though. How much leadership is Dable taking to the point where he's forcing coaches out of New York? That's an issue. Leadership is one thing. Forcing people off the team because you're a massive dick and they can't work with you is a problem.
Wink Martindale is a massive dick also.
Hold on. Stop.
What?
Okay. Let me explain the difference here.
You want to answer or no?
Let me finish my thought first. Hold on. Okay. Here's the difference. You have in Dable an offensive coach who leads a solid offense with a leader on defense that he had in Wink, okay? Mm-hmm. So whatever shortcomings he had on the defensive side, he had a leader on that end that I could actually make something happen. He didn't have that in Kafka, but he's an offensive coach, so he could lead that side of the ball. When you're talking about a coaching staff as a team, when you're a defensive-minded coach, you're going to lead the defense, and Saleh did that with great skill this season, led that team very, very well. The reason you get a solid offensive coach, which we didn't have, is because you have that weakness as a coach who's more defensive minded. Dable had that sort of safety valve in a coach that could lead the defense, which is not his strength. Saleh did not. He did not have a coach that could lead the offense. Now, one thing I will say is this. Compared to last season, okay, we had the same record in both years. But in a way, there was a lot more inconsistency in this team this year compared to last year. That's where I have an issue maybe with what's going on with Saleh. But in terms of excusing one and not the other for what's essentially the same situation, whether it's personnel for the players versus coaching that is having a severe issue with you, either way, both of them are having some form of leadership problems in different areas. Now, we're going to see what happens in this coming season. as well when it comes to both Dable and Salah. But the other thing about Salah is that the inconsistency, again, was not all on him this season, especially since it was the offense that was the massive inconsistency. We hired a coach with a quarterback that were supposed to be the leaders of this team. And then when that quarterback went down and when that offensive coach didn't show us enough after that quarterback went down, what did the personnel squad do? I mean, or the front office, I should say. Jack shit. Okay, that is a big difference between what happened on the Giants versus the Jets. Because when we had an issue with the players that we needed to sign, we didn't do anything. And when you say that Aaron Rodgers led the team, he was the reason we had those problems. That's not leadership. He was the reason we had those problems, going on Pat McAfee all the time. And, I'm not going to blame him for getting injured, but I will blame him for trying to lead the team when it's not actually his team. Yes, it is offensively.
I got it real quick. It's not that I didn't say lead the team. I said kept them in the game. Like, Walt said that he believed that, or rather kept them together. Walt said that Salah kept them together. I believe that Rodgers kept the team together. Leading the team,
I believe they both did.
That's my issue that I have with Salah is I felt like there was no leadership, of the team. But continue.
But that's what I'm saying. I could say the same with Dable when it comes to his coaching staff. And when Aaron Rodgers came up as sort of a de facto offensive coach, when our offensive coach was garbage, that was the backup that Salah might have needed. So they both kept this team together. Salah kept the defense from going off the deep end, and Rodgers probably kept the offense from going off the deep end. We had one of the best defenses in the league. You can't tell me that has nothing to do with Salah's coaching ability. So is there a lot to look forward to next season? That's where I'm probably a little bit more middling in comparison to what you were saying, Walter, because, again, we need a bunch of wide receivers. We had better wide receivers last season. I mean, we have Garrett Wilson with an extra year under his belt, and he's probably a little bit better than that first year. But when he realized he was the only option out there, that boy started to struggle. And there wasn't a damn thing he could do about it because there wasn't anybody else we could get it to other than maybe Breece Hall. Okay? That's a big positive right there, obviously. But when you see what is there going to have to do to bring the offensive line up to snuff? What it is they're going to have to do to get the right wide receivers? What is they're going to have to do to get the right backup quarterback? Those are the things that are concerning, obviously. I have no concern about the defense. We're going to lose a couple of great players, but the core of that defense is phenomenal. And a lot of that has to do with Salah. Just like a lot of what Dable did offensively, or what the Giants did offensively, has to do with Dable. You have to give the coach a little bit more credit for playing to their own strengths. Okay? And that's why I don't see a huge fundamental difference. Maybe there's a little one, but a huge fundamental difference in leadership, I don't see. Now, when it comes to like the Jets further on, let me finish my point of the Jets. Hold on. I lost a damn train of thought.
I didn't say anything. I literally didn't say anything. Not a single
mind bullets.
Yeah.
Mind bullets.
All right. But I mean, I don't know. It's going to boil down to what this team can do with a more limited amount of money in the offseason. We got to get a better offensive line, obviously. We got to get a couple more wide receivers. Randall Cobb ain't it. Alan Lazard ain't it. Gibson ain't there yet, even though I think he's going to be a talent. And the one other thing that I will say about Salah that I hope he learned this season, which was, yes, a massive weakness, was that man needs to learn when he has to take control of more aspects of the offense and the defense, even if he's not an offensive-minded coach. Because Dable certainly did that defensively at certain points last season. Credit where credit is due when the defense was struggling. I'm not saying he took responsibilities away from Wink Martindale, but he certainly took over a little bit more. He basically took over the offense for a lot of the second half of the season. So that's the thing that I want to see more from Salah. Am I saying he's as good a coach as Dable? No, I'm actually not. I think Dable is a better coach at this point. But this massive gulf in their leadership and in their ability, I think that's exaggerated. I think that's beyond exaggerated. When you look at the outcomes, when you look at the coaches playing to their strengths, when you look at what side of the team is rallying around that coach, the offense rallying around Dable, the defense rallying around Salah. It is not this massive gulf that I think that you see there. And that's where I have some issue with this kind of consistent, harping on Salah for a lot of the same mistakes that Dable made this season. But I guess that's my take on that.
Here's what I'm going to say about this whole coaching situation, and I think we're giving a lot of credit to Aaron Rodgers where it's not due. Yes, he was a positive force in that locker room, especially with the younger players. But remember, he wasn't in the building until once he was on the boot and stuff like that. For the majority of the season, he was kind of like a guy on the outside looking in. You know what I'm saying? So, to say that he has this huge presence and he's the one that kept this team together, I got to push back a little bit on that because he wasn't in the building until toward the end of the season. So he wasn't sitting in on these meetings. He wasn't, in practice and things of that nature. It was once he got the okay to start throwing the ball around that you saw a more visible presence by Aaron Rodgers there. So, this notion that Aaron Rodgers was, keeping this team, with string and glue, I don't buy that at all.
Yeah, now I going on Pat McAfee.
Hold on.
Yeah, Pat McAfee. Those guys on distraction, right? That's distraction.
Okay, but
that's not leadership.
So, but there were reports there from like the very after the surgery. Let's talk about the timeline after the surgery, right? We're obviously not talking about before the surgery. Okay, right. That he was, messaging and calling players after every game and throughout the week and stuff until he was able to get on the field with a boot until the game with a boot to be there in person. But he was, and all his messages, all his contact was all about keeping them, keeping the spirits up, and not to mention, playing with them, keeping that like little fish on the hook there, saying, "Hey, I'm coming back. Get yourselves ready. Win those games. I'm coming back. I'm coming back." You don't think that didn't do the majority of the motivation to keep them fighting?
You're talking about little moments. You're talking about little moments here, and if
how
you
do
want to talk about
that?
Let's also talk about the fact that Zach Wilson got no responses from Aaron Rodgers at all. Aaron Rodgers was supposed to be his mentor. Aaron Rodgers was supposed to be the guy that was supposed to teach, Zach Wilson and make him the guy going forward in 2 or 3 years. And the fact that Zach was not even speaking to Aaron Rodgers. How do you call that? Zach was the guy that needed probably the most out of Aaron Rodgers, and he got none of that. Right. So again, I got to push back on this. Yes, I understand the motivational messages are fine and stuff like that, but until you're in the building and being there present at all times, at the end of the day, it's just a message. It's just a test message that you get on your phone.
I mean,
you go from there. Now, let me just because I know we're running short on time here. I got to talk about Salah real quick because Salah, I happen to like Salah as a coach. I think he has a lot of shortcomings. I think this year was not a great year for him at all. You know what I'm saying? A lot of his body language, a lot of the way that he looked after losses at press conferences, I think that was a disservice to him. I think that he didn't approach that well. You know what I'm saying? I think the fact that Aaron Rodgers, all of this hope was built on Aaron Rodgers and he was going to be here and stuff like that. That was a deflating factor for this team, and it extends all the way to the coach, which you want to say it should or shouldn't. And I can go both ways on that. I personally believe that as the coach, he should have rose above that. And there are times that he didn't. Okay. And it wasn't a good look on him. But I will say this. The front office failed him because there was an opportunity when he went down to get a proper quarterback. Now you want to say that, you can't get a quarterback because Aaron Rodgers is there and Tim Boyle knows the offense and Zach Wilson is a guy that you're going to have to, you spent the first round pick. And those are all valid reasons and stuff like that. But at the same time, you also have to say, you know what? Maybe we got to get rid of Tim Boyle, and maybe we bring in a Jacoby Brissett, or maybe we bring in a Gardner Minshew and stuff like that. But let's not get it twisted. Those quarterbacks are backups for a reason. And Jacoby Brissett came in here, pants on fire, and you know what? He eventually went down. The other guy, the bald-headed cat, I can't remember his name, but you know, he was a quarterback that started for
Josh Johnson. Josh Johnson.
Thank you, Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs. Right?
Dobbs. Excuse me. Yes, thank you. Yes,
he's a guy that he's a guy that jumped in there, lit the NFL on fire, and then within 4 weeks he was back to being a backup. Backups are backups for a reason. So once you lose a franchise quarterback, it's very for any team to come back from. Okay,
look at the Bengals.
The Jets should have at least tried. The other thing that I will say is that for all the praise that you can give Saleh for being a defensive coach, he was hamstrung on the offensive side because he was forced to have Hackett on the team as the offensive coordinator, which clearly he is not a good offensive coordinator if he's not coordinating with Aaron Rodgers. So, you know, you can say all you want about Robert Saleh and his leadership and stuff, but quite frankly, he was hamstrung this entire season by Aaron Rodgers, by the front office, and by his offensive coordinator. So if you want to put blame on anybody, you could probably put it on Woody Johnson, and you can put it on Joe Douglas, because they did not do any favors for Robert Saleh and his coaching staff. So that's all I'm going to say.
Well, either way, I think we've already run out our time. This is the end of our season as well as the NFL season. I think you guys still have a lot to look forward to from us, even though it's the end of our season technically. On our recaps of the games, we still got the draft. We still have what is it, like, you know,
free agency.
What?
Free agency.
We still have the preseason and all that stuff. You know, we officially kind of get back to our recording ways, you know, on schedule when the season starts, when the 2024 season officially starts. But we'll give you guys a little bit of stuff here and there. You can see us or expect to hear from us again next after the draft, and then we'll kind of go from there. Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode and every episode since we have started. It's been an awesome year, I think, and we're only hoping to get better and better with every episode. So we can only do that as long as we have viewers. But don't forget to like, rate, share, and subscribe if you haven't yet. Don't forget to share this episode specifically with your favorite Jets or Giants co-fan. And see you guys next time. Until then, go Giants.
And go
Jets!
All right. I wanted to add a little into hell at the end, but